Oh, thank you so much to LACP for providing this incredible platform that has allowed all the artists in the Year of Not Knowing to share their work and stories for the past 5 months. Of course, a huge thank you to the LACP staff for helping us navigate the Zoom waters and making us all look so good. But most importantly, thank you to our audience. I see so many photo friends. I see many, just so many familiar faces, and it just warms my heart. Thank you for showing up when at the end of a long day. And finally, thank you to all the Year of Not Knowing artists for this incredible ride. I'm just totally amazed by you. Since this is our final series of artist talks tonight, I'm going to kind of go over some things because some of you may be new to the series, and I'm going to describe it for you. In January 2020, remember that? It was already feels long ago, when the world was blissfully unaware of the devastating global transformation that would impact every corner of our lives. A group of photographers met for a year-long masterclass. Each would develop a personal photographic project that would ultimately be exhibited at the Los Angeles Center of Photography early in 2021. But the group only met twice in person, once in January and once in February of 2020. And then we all know what happened next. For many of us, the idea of self-quarantining had dual realities. We had finally had time to be creative, but with the impact of the virus, the pain of social unrest, and the country appearing to lose its moral compass. Remember way back when that was the case? At times, this brought a sense of malaise and futility to our efforts. We had moved into uncharted waters with no map to keep us on course. And the best way to describe this journey is simply the Year of Not Knowing. And so we named our exhibition with the same title. This roller coaster year made us better somehow, working together on a common goal, offering support and good humor, and ultimately fanning the creative sparks. The result is that we made it to the finish line. The Year of Not Knowing is a historical marker of this moment in time, with insightful individual projects that speak to gratitude, anxiety, memory, place, and simply being human. And because we all learned how to pivot from our expectations in 2020, instead of an in-person exhibition, we developed a website. We developed 5 evenings of artist talks on Zoom over 5 months, and we created a book about our pandemic experience. We are so grateful to our fellow artist, Sally Ann Fields, for all her efforts in creating these platforms. She's an incredible graphic designer and website designer, and she made us all look so good. But what we discovered from this pivot was that our work was seen much more widely, far beyond what an in-person exhibition could have afforded us. We've had thousands of visitors to our website. And while we missed celebrating together on that one special night of the opening, we've celebrated monthly, and the Zoom has brought so many more eyes to our work. But the good news is that we are all going to get together in person in a few weeks and really celebrate the deep connections we've created over the last 18 months. This is a very special group of people. Okay, I am going to show you a couple of things. And please, no comments on my messy desk. First, here is our website, The Year of Not Knowing. I encourage you to go through the various projects and learn about all the artists. It's really a beautiful website. but more importantly, or equally as important, is the book that we created. And how this worked is each person was allowed to submit 2 photographs. And then we had a series of 6 words that became, they submitted 2 photographs and 6 words that described the photograph. And then I sequenced all of the work, and it was such a fun project. And I have to say, in looking at the work, it now feels a little dated because we're not experiencing life in the same way. But it's also a historical marker of this profound experience that we all went through. So this is the year of not knowing. And I just want to point out Sally's incredible graphic design where she slips in quietly 2020 in between the words. So I'm going to read these quickly, and then we are going to get on to our artist talks. The world has definitely gone sideways when my world went upside down. This world is unnatural to me, looking ahead, looking back, looking ahead. The common became strange, became common. We played everything we possibly could. My hair grew, I cut it. I had no idea you did. Quiet announcement of another shrouded day. This one night turned into many. Once in a blue moon, Halloween. Can't see the forest from the trees. Seeing things that were always there. Every flower on my walk today. I savored this moment in time. Can you smell the coffee? Lovers, we kiss through our masks. We keep looking for the beauty. We long for touch and connection. Parents, no hugs, no goodbye kisses. Pandemic advice coming from all directions. Stoic, still trying to stand strong. Traveling when no one else is. Discarded, all travel has been canceled. Keep your nose under your mask. Thank goodness for essential businesses. Zoomed out, virtual life is exhausting. Even the dogs beg for privacy. Holly's roadkill saloon, no masks allowed. Backyards become front yards, boundaries are everywhere. He refuses to wear a mask. Cash only and face mask required. Small towns, small minds, no masks. I will vote for any Democrat. Thank God. American Dream, the streets of LA. We say his name, George Floyd. Reckoning, gratitude, isolation, injustice, reflection, regeneration. Wake me when it's over. Where life takes me, I go. And after the plague came the Renaissance. So we can all hold on to that thought. This did not have to happen. Beauty is still present in death. So should you care to, you can order that book. The link is on in the chat. And I'm really, really proud of the entire class. It was such a wonderful effort. So tonight, I am so excited to introduce our last 3 artists from the year of not knowing. And please put your questions while they're speaking into the chat while you can still remember them. Hopefully you are all having a vodka drink right now too. So you may not forget, you may not remember your questions. So The artists really want to be asked about their work, so it would be great if you can participate in that. So first up is a photographer that I love and adore, who has taken my personal project class, I think for 5 or 6 years in a row. And I've had the great privilege of photographing her daughter and getting to know her life. And her life is just filled. She just took on a full-time teaching job, and things have really shifted in her world. But anyway, I'm thrilled to introduce her. Elisa Haber, born in New York City, resides in Los Angeles, and she's been an editorial photographer for the last 30 years. Her work is photo illustrative based, and her clients include Flaunt Magazine, Detour Magazine, Newsweek, Time, Entertainment Weekly, Variety, Directors Guild Magazine, the San Francisco Chronicle, the San Diego Tribune, and Venice Magazine. Her series have included work on public access TV personalities, one of my personal favorite series of hers, and called A Corporation, Photographs of, she also created A Corporation, Photographs of Employees at an Undisclosed Location, and her most recent work on twins for her project, Twinsburg. Also completely fascinating project. She's worked extensively in the entertainment field, photographing anywhere from film composers, actors, as well as photographing for the Directors Guild for the last 23 years, and in the aerospace field. She has exhibited widely and has often graced the walls of the Los Angeles Center of Photography with her humorous and evocative photographs. Welcome, Elisa.
Thank you, Eileen. Thank you. Yes, and it's true. This might be my 6th time with Eileen, and I think there might be a 7th coming up. Well, welcome everybody. And I'm going to thank you for coming today. And I know we're in extraordinary times, but I feel like we're coming out of them, and I feel a lot of positivity. So I think I will be seeing everybody in the gallery soon enough. So I want to start my show right now, and I welcome my other friends, Michelle and Hilary, and can't wait to see your work either. Well, welcome, hello and welcome. As you know, I'm Elisa Haber, and as Eileen said, I'm originally from New York. And which was a major influence in my career as a photographer. I was influenced by theater and movies, which helped shape the way I looked at my imagery and allowed me to go into a make-believe world. The sets in black and white films and the theater were one of the most magical places I would remember in my childhood. I went to many galleries as a child, and I always loved looking at the photographs and paintings on the wall. The one time that really inspired me to become a photographer was I was about 17 and I was at the Walker Art Museum. I'm sorry, not the Walker's in Minneapolis, Whitney, thank you, the Whitney in New York. And they had a Robert Frank exhibit on the Americans. And I was completely blown away that somebody could actually take portraits of everyday people in their environment and make it almost look staged. And I studied that book, and I remember leaving the museum and thinking, this is what I want to do. I want to, I was always very interested in looking at people's faces and meeting people. I was always pretty gregarious. And I thought, this is what I want to do. I want to meet people. I want to photograph them in their homes. And I started to study the work. Mary Ellen Mark, Diane Arbus, William Eggleston, Gary Winograd, Larry Sultan and Robert Frank were completely major influences on how I looked at the world, and I was blown away. So I continued my journey, and I moved from New York to Los Angeles in 1994. But before that, I was in grad school up in Brooks University, Brooks Institute. And once I got to Los Angeles, I just met a myriad of people that I could photograph. And through friends and through knowing, a lot of people in different realms of the world, I met up with a friend, and she said, she was in the music field, and she said, "Oh, I think you should meet this guy, Jimmy, and his mom. And they live in Van Nuys. And this guy, Jimmy, really thinks he's Elvis, or he's best friends with Elvis." So I went to their home, and this is Jimmy and his mom. His mom was an ex-Follies dancer, and this is her on the right. And I spent an entire day with them in their home. And we eventually had dinner, and we ate delicious TV dinners. I remember thinking, this is the greatest day. And this is exactly what I want to do in life. I just want to enter people's home, and I want to photograph them in their environment. So I continued that kind of portrait work, and I would photograph anybody that I would find interesting and had a story. I photographed my aunt, who's on the left-hand side. This is a home. She was a Holocaust survivor, and this is her home in upstate New York. And this is a family home I would visit frequently as a child. And I photographed Aunt Elsie on her porch. And then to the right is my dad's friend he grew up with in the Bronx. His name is Harry Kislevitz, and he was the creator of Color Forms. A complete, I don't even know how to describe him. He was just, he was larger than life. And he sat down for me and photographed me in front of a painting of somebody that pretend, he wanted to be Uncle Sam. And this is him in front of Uncle Sam. So I would meet people, and I would just ask them to, if I could photograph them. I met this woman named Fran in New York City. She was an activist and a collector of erotic teddy bears, you can see on her couch. And I was able to go into her home. And this was also the time in the 90s when Fairfax Avenue still had kind of a thriving Jewish community. And I would walk up and down, and I would go into the hair salons. And this is Vlad the Mad Barber. So as you know, a lot of Fairfax, if you're from Los Angeles, is not really there anymore. So my love of portraits continued, and I eventually started to get hired for magazines, and they saw that my style was very personal, and I decided they gave me an assignment to create photographs of the kind of the dying cable access TV field. And so one of the people, I started to investigate this on my own. So the person on the left you see is a TV show host. His name was Count Smokula. And I shot this in his backyard, and he had some kind of crazy kind of vampire TV show, talk show with the kind of random people off the street. So this started a whole series, and I would just find people that had shows on TV. And the one on the right, her name was Dr. Susan Block, and she was a Yale graduate, so she says, and she was also a sex therapist. And this was taken in her basement. She had a ongoing cable TV show down in her basement. And honestly, this is probably one of the scariest shoots I was ever on. Maybe I can tell you about that later. Anyway, this was part of the series, and these two also came from the series. On the left is a talk show host named Skippy Lowe, and this is his apartment in West Hollywood, absolutely tiny. I don't understand how I got into this space. and he would interview like kind of aging Hollywood stars. And on the right was a TV show called Colin and His Sleazy Friends, and he interviewed porn stars. And this was taken at a motel in Eagle Rock. So I like to prop, which is a great influence from theater um, and film. And so I set up a lot of this in the room. Spider-Man just happened to be on the TV. So sometimes, you know, we luck out as photographers and artists. I continued that series with Douglas Long, who was a doll collector living in West Hollywood. And at the time he had AIDS. So I'm not sure if he's with us today. And then this is Mel Batost, who is kind of a stage personality and had a cable show. And this was in her kitchen. I just was in touch with Mel Batost, and I'd like to tell you that she's going to be giving me her wigs. I guess they're in the well. So I was kind of flabbergasted when I found that out. She's about 7 wigs. So anyway, so that was a series that I was working on, and I just had a love of people, and I wanted to continue to do series. So back in 2016, when I was working at the Aerospace Corporation, there were twin security guard women from Michigan, and they mentioned to me that there's this International Twins Day in Twinsburg, Ohio. And I'm like, excuse me, what's that? And I looked it up, and there it was. It was 20 minutes out of Cleveland. And they have different themes every year. And so I had been going for the last 4 years, minus last year when we were in COVID. This year it's on. So I would take my my 2.25 camera and shoot everything in film. And lo and behold, 3,000 people would show up to this event from all over the world. And people had been going for years. I think they're on their 40th anniversary. So I started to document people that would show up, and it was unbelievable. So the theme on the right is Twinfinity and beyond. On the left was your heritage. So I suppose they were of Scottish heritage. Occasionally triplets would show up, and the theme on the left, I don't think they followed a theme that year, but they wanted to be the Big Lebowski. And on the right was a theme called Dress Up as Your Favorite Game. So I continued this shoot, and I have many images. This is an incredible event. If you're ever near Cleveland in the summer, I highly recommend it. They have a double take parade in the beginning of the festival. And it is just remarkable to see how many twins get together. And I mean, they're just absolutely going out of their mind when they're together and all in one place. The ones on the right are the security guard twins that I had met that got me there, Kathy and Karen. And this is some other twins from 2019. And the ones on the left they're mainly identical, but you'll have occasional fraternal. So it's incredible what I'm never out of film. I'm never short of not finding anybody to photograph when I'm there. So highly recommended. So this is part of a series that I'm still working on. I'm in the works of creating a book on it, and it is it's an amazing experience to be there and to hear the twins follow each other's sentences and feel the excitement. So I took a major jump to another project, which leads me to my final images. I changed course on my work and wanted to do something very personal to me. And this is project I had been thinking about, and finally got it together, and I collected memorabilia of my grandmother. So on the left is my grandma City, who was born in 1915 and who passed away when I was 4. I know that I met her, but I don't really remember her. She was a German Jewish escapee from Nazi Germany, and she died at the age of 57. And I finally wanted to tell her story, so I collected objects that were of hers. And she escaped Nazi Germany in 1937. And you can see the passports on the left, with the help of my grandfather, Leo, who you can see, who she met in Bavaria in 1935. They fell in love and worked for the German Jewish underground. And when times became very bad in Germany, he got everyone out, and her family and his, and they all settled in a place called Washington Heights, which is in New York, upper New York, where my mom was born and raised. So what I did, I started to collect memorabilia of hers. I used objects to recreate the grandmother I never knew. Like I said, she died at age 57 she fell down a flight of stairs in New York. And I wanted to tell her story through my photography using objects that were hers. And because I like to prop, I started to prop some of her pictures, some of her memorabilia. First, I recreated her glamorous life through the use of her furs and her handbag. This is a handbag I used to play with when I was a little kid. And my mom always described her as having these long nails. She always had a cigarette in her hand. And so what I did is I recreated what I would think she would have looked like if I had seen her in her glory. She had a very kind of sad life in 1960. Even though life was very posh for her, my grandfather was a very successful meat packer in New York City, and she had everything she wanted after coming from a destitute life in Germany. She had the best of everything until one day, my grandfather just one day moved up to their home in Great Neck, and there was a moving van, and he just left her. And what I did with this photo is I recreated these are objects from her house and her photographs, and I wanted to recreate what I felt was kind of her lonely place. And she became very depressed after that. And nothing was quite the same as, I mean, these are recollections my mom would tell me about. So when I was 4, the one memory that I always had standing out my mind was when my mom answered this phone, which was this is an actual phone. These are all her objects. And this phone to me was this is the phone my mom was the day that she got a call from the hospital in New York that she had passed away from her brain injuries. And that phone is still with me today, as you can see. And this phone was actually the catalyst for this project. So I continued with the objects, and because these are all her, this was a necklace she used to wear on her neck of my brother and I. And this was actually a jacket she had because she had to go back to work. My grandfather left her with nothing, and she became a candy striper. I continued the series with a doll she had given me as a little girl. And I did not realize till later on she had given me this doll. And I still have it. And that doll, I would look at it, my mom said, and I would just smile. And so far, this is what I have right now in this series about my grandmother. And I'm still working on it. And it's actually been very cathartic for me and very different. So I wanted to, I will continue this series, and I want to share with you, if you want to look at more of my work, I'm at haberphoto.com, and I have an Instagram site you can look at my work at. And that's it. And thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Elisa. So fun to go down memory lane. And I mean, what happened to the old cable TV? I mean, cable TV is now very sophisticated.
I don't know, but I have a lot more photographs in my collection. And the irony is, if anybody who's in Los Angeles on this Zoom, there is, if anybody went down to the music center, do you see a guy with puppets who sings? There's a guy down at the music center who I photographed, who was one of the cable access guys, and he's still performing. So.
Yeah, I actually remember being in line at the Troubadour as a teenager, and Steve Martin was blowing up, balloon animals for anyone standing in line. It was like crazy. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
We're moving on to Hilary White, and so thrilled to share her work tonight. Hilary is a photographer who focuses on personal narrative, street, and fine art photography. Her work explores the coexistence of beauty and imperfection, strength and fragility, and the realm of the unspoken. She is envisioning images that reflect how we view ourselves, our culture, and our surrounding environment. Hilary studied at Sarah Lawrence College and the School of Visual Arts, and has a background in art, publishing, and digital media. Her longtime passion for photography was reignited through developing digital media campaigns where she utilized bold, striking images to connect with others online. She's currently creating a book based on her long-term project, The Patriarchy and Me, a visual dialogue with her father about what was unspoken, love, sex, power, and money. The series combines archival images, memorabilia, and conceptual photographs. I guess it was about 2 years ago or a year ago, she published a spin-off of The Patriarchy and Me with a book entitled I'm Your Man, a modern woman's guide to dating in online dating in 2020, and it is hilarious. It's an experiential project exposing the misogynistic culture of online dating. And a series of her street photographs taken during the spring of 2020 in Los Angeles, when the pandemic and social unrest were raging throughout the country, is published in a book, Saturday Morning, Notes from Today for Tomorrow. The book is a collaborative effort with a group of 15 women artists and creatives in Los Angeles. And she's currently working on The Secret Life of Garbage, making abstract photographs of trash found on the streets that respond to our throwaway culture and dependence on Amazon, which spiraled out of control during the pandemic. Boy, did it ever. Hilary's work has been exhibited on the West Coast and at the Southeast Center of Photography in Molina, Georgia. I know I got that wrong. Excuse me, but welcome, Hilary. We're so thrilled to have you here tonight.
Okay, hi, welcome. I'm honored to be part of the Year of Not Knowing 2021. I would like to thank LACP for hosting tonight and for the amazing classes and community they've created. A special thanks to Aline Smithson, who made this year and a half a time of inspiration and creativity under the most challenging circumstances. Sally Ann Field and Karen Constein, we couldn't have done it without you. And I also want to thank my fellow classmates, my family, friends, and colleagues for supporting me and being here tonight. Okay, some background. So I grew up in New York City and had early exposure to art through my proximity to major museums and other cultural centers. I've always been a visual learner and have collected images and memorabilia from my past. This Polaroid photograph was taken outside my elementary school when I was in 6th grade. I'm in the front with the plaid skirt and white knee socks. The Metropolitan Museum of Art is in the background. I scanned this image along with a collection of archival family photographs, which have become a primary source of inspiration for me. That's some background on my family. That's my father, a film producer on the far left, joined by my mother in the center and friends and business partners. My father had great significance in my life and became the subject of a long-term project I'm still working on. Part of my exploration as an artist has been focused on his relationship with the women in his life, including me. During high school, I continued my immersion into the arts and then studied writing and photography at Sarah Lawrence College in the School of Visual Arts. For years, I worked on other people's art projects, and each one influenced me every step of the way on my winding path towards becoming a photographer. Here are some of the cameras I've used on my journey. The first camera I got was a Polaroid, and then I got a Minolta. Now I use my Fuji cameras, and I also love my iPhone. This is an image from Helmut Newton's book, White Women. And in my early 20s, I worked at the company that published the book. This book had an impact on me because Newton depicted female nudes and visually erotic images of women that at the time I thought were amazing. I didn't realize then that the models were being completely objectified and that all the images were originally created for French, British, and American Vogue. I was always absorbing images. I still wasn't a photographer at this point, but images were my language. I transitioned from book publishing to film production. I started out working as assistant to the director, Adrian Lyne, on his feature film, 9.5 Weeks, an erotic cult classic. This is a location still taken on the Hudson River piers on New York's West Side. I have to admit, I didn't show any of the sex scenes from this movie because I find them disturbing now. But after that film, I went on to produce documentaries and commercials for several years. In 2005, I moved with my family from New York City to Santa Monica, California. I went from a city of 8 million people to a city of 100,000 people. It was a huge adjustment physically, socially, and especially culturally, but now I feel at home in both places. I wanted to live closer to nature, and here I get to see the sunrise and sunset every day. I became interested in technology in early 2010 when social media was emerging on the scene. I was taking photographs and writing content on multiple digital platforms, and I needed to know about formatting images. This led me back to my early passion for photography. I frequently consulted on projects about art and sustainability. One of the most inspiring was Wildflowering LA, a native wildflower seed sowing initiative throughout Los Angeles County by artist Fritz Haig. These are images of a few of the 50 sites that were sown in fall 2013 to bloom in spring 2014. The project culminated with a book and a public exhibition and is presented by Los Angeles Nomadic Division. Through witnessing the growth of the native wildflowers, I saw firsthand how abundant and also fragile and vulnerable California's resources are, and the extent to which climate change impacts our daily lives. This is when I picked up a camera again. During the time when I began photographing on the streets of Los Angeles and New York, I also discovered several boxes of archival black and white photographs that my father had saved from his World War II days. The images were high quality and well preserved, and I was compelled to do a series about my father. He had always been very secretive about his life before he married my mother, his third wife. And then he left behind a collection of photographs of himself and the many amorous women he had in his life. He meticulously labeled each one with handwritten or typed captions, including names, dates, locations, and commentary on their physique or other attributes. This image is a composite of a cover my father made for some limericks he wrote while he was in the Air Force. He had stamped "Secret, property of Captain Henry S. White" on it. Then I superimposed over it the only photograph I have of me and my father from my childhood. My father was often gone, and when he was around, he spent most of his time socializing with the grown-ups. These are images my father had taken of himself with the many women he had affairs with while he was stationed in Europe between 1943 and 1945. These were part of my research about his past and the roots of patriarchy in my family. This one is an image he took of one of his women friends enjoying an afternoon on the beach. This handwritten caption that he attached to it says, "Now this one is a masterpiece. It lets me see whether you really are getting fatter or slimmer." This emphasis on perfectionism had a brutal impact on me because nothing was ever quite good enough. This image is important to me because it's from a series of the only family portraits ever taken during my childhood. This was how my parents wanted our family to appear to others. This is my father during my teenage years, filming on location with his business partner on the right and two well-known actresses. It's not surprising that during my youth and early 20s, I was saturated with images of women as sex objects in films, books, magazines, art, photography, advertisements, and commercials. This is a still I created from a 1950s Fredericks of Hollywood lingerie catalog, which arrived at our apartment every month, wrapped discreetly in brown paper. I added some props from my father's daily life, a cigarette and matches. Then I reimagined the photograph in flames with burnt edges. As a film producer, my father traveled continuously for work, and my mother was in charge of the domestic front. But during the summer, when I turned 19 years old, my life suddenly changed drastically. My parents had a car accident, and my mother died instantly. For reasons I no longer try to understand, my father chose to cut me off financially at the same time. I was totally devastated. However, I remained loyal to my father and had dinner with him every week until he died. Now, through creating this project, I realized he was totally a product of his generation. He grew up in a patriarchal system that entitled men to hold positions of power and wealth, and he passed that on to his family. This image symbolizes the rage and shock I felt at the time my mother died and my father's response to it. I broke a glass on top of his portrait, symbolizing the windshield of their car, which he had been driving, and my shattered dreams. The title of this photograph is "Fuck the Patriarchy." I made a self-portrait reflecting back to my father what he wanted from women: physical beauty and fulfillment of his desires. This was a smokescreen for what was actually happening behind that facade. Real love and intimacy were elusive. When I was creating the patriarchy in me, I tried online dating for the first time, as I had just gotten divorced after a 28-year marriage. I saw that men portrayed themselves with trophies like fancy cars, motorcycles, exotic animals, and guns. They bared their chests, posed semi-nude in their underpants, stood in front of bathroom mirrors to take selfies, and proclaimed, "I'm your man." It was like seeing the archetype of my father all over again, and I was struck that men continued to glorify that persona. The project consisted of photos I selected online of famous men and iconic male movie stars, like this one of Arnold Schwarzenegger on the left. Then I matched these famous men with their counterparts using screenshots I had taken of real men's profiles on many different dating sites. So you'll see the dating profiles on the right, and these are real, and this is what it was like for me when I went on these dating sites. I found that online dating encourages elaborate sexual and romantic fantasies. Characters resembling Donald Trump and Disney heroes are commonplace, but it's the couple with the stuffed polar bear in the center here that is my favorite photograph in the series. The hero taming a wild animal was popular, and it reminded me of Tarzan. Here I found men with sea turtles, tigers, a monkey, and a rhinoceros, and more. On online dating sites, men seem to mimic female postures, attempting to capitalize on sexist models of attraction. It's not a surprise that I did not have any success with online dating. It turns out that the majority of male profiles I encountered online featured the younger, more attractive, more accomplished, and better versions of the men that I met in real life. During class, I began working on I wanted to create a portrait series, but because of the pandemic, I needed to change my topic. So I conceived of the Reciprocity Project as a visual conversation to connect with other photographers during lockdown. My plan was to share a word prompt along with one of my images, which my two collaborators would respond to each week. And then I would make a triptych of each conversation. All of this was done on Instagram with a live audience. So the prompt for this conversation I'm showing you now was climate change. I took this photograph at sunrise on a street corner in Santa Monica when smoke from the north and east filled the sky as we witnessed the worst fire season Southern California had ever experienced, which was during the pandemic in 2020. My collaborator, Amantha Starr, shared her image of a tree in California with a stop sign on it. My collaborator, Mark Hanauer, shared a photograph he had recently taken of the fires in Portland, Oregon. The triptych tells the story by sequencing the images in the conversation. Although this was not my final project for our class, it led me to my current project, which also deals with the environment. The Secret Life of Garbage began as I noticed garbage overflowing from the tops of recycling bins onto the ground, into the alleys, and onto the streets of my neighborhood. There were growing piles of discarded products, plastic, paper, cardboard, cans, containers, bags, clothing, and other items we consume and throw away every day. The garbage takes on surreal shapes and forms. With details blurred, the trash appears to be floating as if on its way out to sea, or it takes on human or animal qualities. During the pandemic, many people had to rely on Amazon for basic items. In 2020, Amazon reported a net income of $21.33 billion, up from $11.6 billion the previous year. I found these memorabilia being tossed around by the wind in an alley. Newspapers, a single-use plastic water bottle, and a colored box waiting to be picked up by a garbage truck. Manufacturers spend more than $150 billion a year on product packaging, or roughly 7 to 10 cents of every dollar that goes into a product. And 15 billion trees are cut down every year to make those packages. During the year of not knowing, when everyone was inside their homes, clues to life during lockdown were revealed in the discarded items I found in recycling bins and back alleys. This project has given me a new perspective on our delicate ecosystem and deepened my connection to the natural world and the landscape around me. To see more of my work, please visit me on Instagram at Hilary White. And thank you to everyone for making this all possible and coming out tonight and supporting me and being here for LACP. Thank you.
All righty. And the last person in our trifecta for this evening is the amazing Michelle Elkins, who is an LACP board member. She is really a dynamic board member, and we are so grateful to have her. But she is also a dynamic photographer, and I'm so happy to see a few people in the audience with the last name of Elkins. So I have a feeling your family's here tonight, Michelle. Michelle is a Southern California native who uses the camera to discover relationships between light, science, art, spirituality, and humanity. She received her Bachelor of Science in Business Management at Pepperdine University. Michelle's management experience as a former technology executive enabled her to donate her time in providing strategic and process skills to several nonprofit organizations, which is at the core to her values. Those organizations have included technology, STEM mentoring, diversity outreach, community involvement, and addiction recovery organizations. She now pursues fine art photography along with a continued dedication in volunteerism. Michelle completed a certification in the one-year program at the Los Angeles Center of Photography in fine art photography. She began her journey with photography as a way to connect with her teenagers and family. Since retiring from a management career, she pursues fine art photography along with a continued dedication to volunteerism. Her art centers on light, science, art, and human interactions, focused on photography and mixed media. And she uses the mediums of photography and collage to explore presentation and performance of individual identity and its relation to social, historical, and political boundaries. Welcome, Michelle.
Thank you, Eileen. Really appreciate it. Thank you for everyone for being here. Thank you to my family. I see my family has showed up, so thank you so much. I'll do a proper thank you at the end. Let me just go ahead and get started. All right, can you see that?
Yep.
Great, thank you. So I'll just cover a little bit of significant events in my early years that have shaped my life. I am the firstborn of 11 children. My father was an engineer and my mother was a stay-at-home mom. We really had like two families with a large gap in the center. To this day, we always refer to the older family and the younger family. My youngest brother was born long after I moved out of home. For many years, I was a caregiver and babysitter, and other than cooking, my free time was focused on doing well in school with a love of science. We moved around quite a bit, but remained in Southern California. In my late 20s, I married another native Californian, the love of my life, and my first date at 16. We had two wonderful boys who've turned into such fine young men and are successful in their chosen paths. My own personal tribe expanding as they are both now engaged to beautiful, smart women whom I love as my own. After different jobs in the accounting and computer industry, I eventually ended up working for a multinational conglomerate as a technology leader, my role ever expanding over my 20-year tenure. In high school and college, I had the unusual opportunity to apprentice in art restoration, restoring paintings on the walls and ceilings of a 12,000 square foot private home. Towards the end of the project, a colleague and mine even bid to work on restoring the ceilings in the Biltmore Hotel. But alas, this did not come to pass, as we were told then that we were too young and the work was sparse. Had I been living in Europe, I might have had a different career as restoration work is more prolific there. These are examples of some of the paintings I restored, showing the work halfway finished. The ceiling in the main living room was damaged, and we had to reapply the gold leaf to the fleur-de-lis that covered the ceiling. I spent quite a bit of time living on a 40-foot scaffold after school. Another important influence in my life is my mother-in-law, Joan Almond. She was a dedicated photographer for the majority of her life. Self-taught, she traveled the world photographing remote locations with a focus on life in the village. I fell in love with platinum photography. She was our real introduction to photography. She and her husband, Paul, a Canadian film director, brought us along while providing an incredible education in galleries, art, and photography shows. There were intimate dinners with artists, filmmakers, writers, and photographers, a world also foreign to me. I learned so much and was fascinated by the work, creativity, and the interactions that we experienced. Although I'm in love with a lot of imagery, these are a few of my inspirational photographic artists. A Mexican photographer who studied under Manuel Bravo. I could relate to her. She's the eldest of 13. A brave photographer, well under 5 feet tall, and at 68 years old, she traveled on the migrant train, photographing the difficult travel circumstances of the refugees. Her work has been dedicated on indigenous and rural populations, especially women, with a focus on the adaptation of traditional life to the modern world. Pente Samalate, a Finnish photographer who had an unprecedented 20-year grant from the government just to take pictures. I love his quirky and unusual pictures of dogs and other animals. He has traveled Northern Europe capturing images of the silence, cold, and the sea, many times with a bit of humor. Sig Harvey, I love her luscious use of color and luminous natural light, so attractive and so engaging. And I love her focus on familiar relationships relating to her own experience with motherhood and her daughter. And of course, our own beloved Aline Smithson, a visual storyteller who stretches boundaries in her work through her use of color, creativity, and humor, a brilliant creative force in our community. So my wanderings in photography, I started out, my first foray in photography was taking pictures of my family and friends at the beach and surf activities. Surfing was a way to be with my family of surfers and not have to be in the water. Being afraid of the water relegated me to the ocean's edge. Even though I had zero photography experience, the acquisition of a large camera and a really nice long lens impressed the surfers, young and old. This led to unsolicited invitations to surf events. I even traveled with the high school surf club. The personal connection that developed with those young men always stays warm in my heart. Then as my boys began to leave home to pursue their own dreams, I wondered what would be next. Did I have anything to take pictures of or anything to say? Searching for a new voice in photography, I began taking classes at LACP. I started out with street and ended up completing a certificate in fine art photography at LACP. In my first personal project with Abalone a couple of years ago, I started a project called Talk to the Hand, my artist statement. Do our hands really tell us something about ourselves and our future? Talk to the Hand is a collaborative inquiry among palmists, subjects, and me. This series combines photographs of each subject's hand, an ink print, and the subject's honest response to the palmist reading. The unfortunate passing of one of my friend's 30-year-old son, a child that laughed and played and ate dinner in our home, spurred an interest in how we mourn and remember the departed. Mexico has been a large part of our lives for the past 15 years, and I was interested in learning about the Day of the Dead tradition. I began a multi-year project taking pictures of different communities in Mexico to learn the local Day of the Dead customs. At the beginning of 2020, flash forward, I started a project called Sitting Out. Prior to the COVID lockdown, I'd started this project to photograph my surroundings area. On a walk through the neighborhood, I noticed several different types of benches and chairs in the neighborhood's yards that I just never seemed to notice before. They struck me as a compelling gathering spot for family expanding beyond confinement. Exploring these empty benches and chairs made me question how their placement reflected the owner's persona and if they were mere adornment or fully appreciated and utilized. This was the project that I had planned to complete for 2020. And then as you've all experienced, the world shut down with COVID and many other concerning events. I felt stuck in a fog. I questioned how would I even complete this class or any work at all. In fact, I tried to bow out. So sometimes when I'm out of sorts, I clean my space in hopes that clarity will somehow appear. So hence begins my project called Salted Water Waves. And I will, as I scroll through the images, I'm going to read through my artist statement. Creativity last year. As one day blended into another, I began perusing my image inventory, thinking I could mindlessly reorganize the mess of pictures. It was surprising to discover the thousands of waves, beaches, and surf images that I had captured over the years. I smiled with the memories of each of those trips at the ocean with family and friends, and I was seeking to create something new, anything new. After a few months of experimentation with different images, papers, elemental metals, and variegated leaves, I discovered the beauty of abalone. The abalone veneer provides a physical texture and the symbolism of strength and healing. Each image is not only unique in the moment captured, but the individuality of the abalone shells molded into a single sheet. Observing the art of surfing, one can see the surfer enjoying the thrill and speed of a wave and the energetic force propelling them, interspersed with meditative time between the waves. So just a little bit about the process and the use of abalone. So I had long admired the beautiful images that incorporated elemental metals by Kate Brakey and Wendy Schneider. However, the test images evoked a different perspective. So I checked back with the suppliers to see about purchasing the variegated leaves to test them. And as I was perusing the website, at the very bottom, there was just a shiny little picture, and I clicked on it, and I saw these beautiful pieces of shiny veneers. I thought, wow, something from the ocean. That's fortuitous. It seemed like magic in the moment. However, since the veneers were used for different types of applications, I clicked, purchased, and then spent the following months experimenting in how to make this work. Abalone translates literally to stomach on foot. It's basically a flat sea snail. The abalone is a gastropod and part of the mollusk family, i.e. clams, mussels, sea slugs. The abalone shell is very strong on the outside. In fact, it's stacked with microscopic calcium carbonate. The abalone shell is thickened on the inside with layers of what's commonly known as mother of pearl, providing the iridescence. Abalones do sometimes produce a pearl like oysters, but it's very rare because any injury to the abalone results in its demise. The abalone eats algae and seaweed. The color is their color inside the shell is determined by their food source. So over their lifetime, different colors emerge as their food sources change, making each abalone fantastically unique. Typically, the abalone veneers are used for guitars and other musical instruments, like and jewelry, furniture inlays, and watch faces. Abalone is not hunted for the shell, but it is a food source. Although abalone is found all over the world, it appears that much of the veneer construction is produced in Thailand, South Korea, and China, depending on the supplier. For example, the abalone pictured on the left originates from Jakarta and the one on the right from Japan. However, they were both assembled in South Korea. So the abalone is actually first cut into on large saws into pieces about the size of a quarter, depending on the size of the abalone. And then they are further cut on what they call a feather cut saw. And then they are manually assembled into long sheets. The image on the right is a day's worth of work. These veneers are produced and sold in odd sizes of 5.5 by 9.5, and no one can answer why, but that's what they come in. So this is my current board of veneer choices. After I cut and prep the veneers, I place the vellum images that I printed on each of these samples to see what works. Later, I perform the nervous step of adhering to the surface of the veneer because you don't get a second chance. I love this quote from Bethany Hamilton, a young surfer who lost her arm in a shark attack, but continues to surf professionally today. Being creative on the waves is challenging, but we each create art in our own way. And so I think to myself, I created art while watching someone else created art. So I'm going to stop the screen here and just show you as these scans. So if you put me on, although I hate this, but if you put me on speaker so you can see. So the scans that you saw don't actually represent the physicality. I realized late in the game that when you scan, the light hits the scan and it makes it pop. So I wasn't sure. This is a work in progress. And I do know in this light that the mat looks gray, but it's actually white. And so I was able, hopefully you can see this, I was able to get these backlit frames. Let's see if I can turn this. There we go. And so as you can see, I can turn the light up and down and the image changes. So definitely a little work in process and just kind of fun. So thank you so much for your time today. And I just want to send a brief thank you to all of you who have supported me over the last year, my family. I'm so fortunate for the family that's in my life. Thank you for being here tonight and for always encouraging and supporting me. Aline, thank you for your amazing contributions to this community as part of your daily life. Your thoughtfulness, mentorship, and continued cheerleading through one of the most difficult times in our history will never be forgotten by anyone in this class. And for me personally, sticking with me where I was during that time and extending your hand to me in support, I will be forever grateful. To the Year of Not Knowing class, thank you all for showing up, freely sharing your talents and your struggles, and for your most gracious feedback. I feel a special bond as it was truly a special year. And as always, thank you LACP for everything that you do to continue to support and promote us. Thank you very much.
Sorry, you can hear my clapping. Thank you, Michelle. What a beautiful ending to this 18-month foray, and wonderful presentations all. I just am so excited for everybody and thrilled. And I'm not seeing a lot of you questions, so please bring them on. So I'm going to ask a few. I'm going to start with Elisa. I have a couple, but was there a characteristic that you discovered that was unique to twins?
Good question. Yes. Well, I don't want to sound cliche, but I'm going to. They definitely followed each other's sentences. And so when I would spend time with them, there was, they kind of knew what the next person was going to say. And that was true, I guess, in most of the people I talked to. There was, first of all, similar voices, and then similar even if they weren't the same, they knew what the other person was going to say. There was a similar thought process.
Yeah. Thank you. Hilary, what new did you discover about yourself while you were making The Patriarchy and Me?
That I discovered that the qualities and behaviors and mannerisms of the patriarchy were so ingrained in me that I didn't even realize it in my childhood or early 20s. Like I thought it was all totally normal. So by really looking at these photographs and having a window into my father's past, I really got to see that it's just, that's how he was brought up. You know, that's part of our culture. And, you know, we can break that chain.
Okay, Michelle, one thing I was thinking about while you were talking is that your previous series were about people's hands, and now you are actually using your hands to create this new work with the Abalone, and so different from the career that you spent much of your life doing, that now that it's a very tactile, hand-driven process. And I just wondered if you wanted to speak to that at all.
It's definitely been a challenge, you know, using your head to plan things out. This is, you've got to be able to do a little bit more on the fly, especially when you're doing something you're not familiar and you can't exactly take a class on it. But I do find it like very fulfilling. I mean, it's just so fun and different. And I just love that part of it, you know, and being able to tap into my own creativity. I didn't think I had any. So it was kind of cool.
We know different. So my friend Gil Garcetti is here tonight. Thank you, Gil, for coming.
Pleasure,
and he has asked a question of all three artists. Congratulations to each of you on your unique projects. A question for each of you: what are your ultimate goals with your project? So Elisa, yours was City and Me. What is your ultimate goal with that?
Thank you for joining. Good question. Well, I have a lot more to work on with it, and my ultimate goal is to create a more in-depth piece and to show that, probably do a small book form and to show it more in a gallery setting. I know it's so personal that sometimes I'm not sure if it resonates with everybody, but I would personally like to work on it in a greater, with more images and more setups, and to show it in a gallery and to create a little book with it.
You know, I just want to say that when an artist starts making work that's very personal, I truly believe that it is a gift for the next generation. And it doesn't always have to be something that's shown in a gallery. It can really be a artistic exploration of family histories that you pass on to your children or to people you know, so that they kind of understand the world that you grew up in. I think we also have to stop worrying about that every project has to be a successful home run in a gallery, that some of it is just making work for ourselves. So that's just my thought. Hilary, do you want to answer?
Yeah, I really agree with what you just said, Aline. I start out making work because I derive some kind of pleasure from it. I am working in photo books right now and taking the project about my father to make a book, starting out as a digital book. And I like that format, the book format. I feel like, you know, paper and wall space and galleries. We don't really know what's going to be in the future. But I like a book. It's just tangible. You can pick it up, you can share it with people, you look at it often. And that's the direction I'm going in.
Okay, thank you, Hilary. And Michelle.
So funny you said what you said, because my intention for this is to once I get this whole frame thing figured out, that this will go to each of the young and old men that I took these photos. I didn't mention it, but many of these photos were taken 15 years ago. So I have photos of, of course, the surf club, but family members who, aren't here anymore, and friends of friends. So I'm actually going to be sending them be a surprise for some of them. So it's kind of just fun, right? Hey, here you were when you were 15 and something unique and different.
So Michelle, Richard Chow has asked, are you limited in size due to the use of abalone?
If you would have asked me 2 months ago, I would have said yes, but really that's not the case. You could layer them like you do with gold leaf sheets. I mean, that's the section they were sold in, which is funny, but they're not, these are very thin pieces. So they could be melded together, but it's a bigger thought process, because when they manufacture them, they're made in these 5.5 sheets cut, right? So it's like part of a lot. It's like buying tile, custom tile. So I could do something different. I just haven't gotten that far yet, but that's a great question. Thank you, Richard.
And we'll end on Trey's comment, who says, careful who you call old.
For those who don't know, that's my husband.
Well, I just want to thank again LACP, but really to thank this wonderful group of artists and this wonderful audience, who I just love seeing all your faces. You know who you are. I can see you. Really, what a great community that we're in. We all support each other. We all are cheerleaders for each other. We all champion and see the world in such unique ways. We are so lucky to be part of this photographic community. And I'm so grateful for just all of you for being here, and particularly the Year of Not Knowing artists who just blew my mind in the last 5 months with their wonderful artist talks and their projects, etc. So here's to being double vaxxed and getting back out in the world and hugging and seeing each other, and trying to find a new normal, which will be interesting. Someone told me they went out to lunch recently and they were going to do all these errands, and after lunch they were so tired they had to go back home and lie down because they're not used to being in the world. So I hope our energy levels all improve, and bravo to everyone. Thank you, and take good care.